So today we're going to discuss lone wolf versus critique group. Now, all of us here have been in critique groups, so we're probably going to weigh in on the side of critique groups are better. However, some of us might have had experience going lone wolf, so to speak. Anyway, so we're just going to discuss that topic. Today with me, I have Matt Rotundo.
Hello.
Oh, yep. Nicole Cushing.
Howdy.
Sherry Peters.
Hey.
And Vidya Gopalakrishna.
Hello.
Yes. So have any of you gone lone wolf before, where you've just sworn off critique groups for a while? And I guess we can just start. I wouldn't say that I ever have, so I'll just say a no to that. So what about you, Matt?
I don't know that I've ever, I can say I've gone lone wolf necessarily, but I would say that I am not very active with getting a whole lot of critiques these days. I tend to be more along the lines of using a wise reader or two. I have a good friend of mine who is very well versed in science fiction and fantasy, and he's very familiar with my work, and so I'm able to trust him. He is very straightforward. He doesn't gild the lily at all. He'll if he thinks something I've written is boring as hell, he'll say, you know what, this is boring as hell. And he's very good. He's very good at identifying problems that I have. So he is one of my go-to people for this sort of a thing. The closest I've ever come to going lone wolf would have just been with some stories that maybe was very early on in my career. I think maybe just before I went to Odyssey, which I attended in 1998. Before then, I had no critique group of any kind. So about all I could do was just maybe show it to this friend of mine, like I say, or kind of just send it out into the great unknown. But since then, I either would rely on him or some other critique groups.
Cool. Yeah, Odyssey must have been a big kind of shocker at that point then.
Well, it wasn't necessarily a shock, but there is. I never forgot the feeling of kind of what it felt like after my first critique. I was like, actually, I kind of feel like I've been ripped apart by wolves. So that was certainly unforgettable. It wasn't necessarily painful, but it was new.
Yeah. Okay, what about you, Nicole?
I will occasionally go ahead and submit a story without it having been critiqued. And part of that is just a function of if you write a lot of short stories, for example, in particular, many critique groups have a limit of how many stories you can go ahead and post. So it would just not be practical to have them all go through critique or all go through critique at the same time. But a lot of times, I write a lot of fiction that can be marketed as horror fiction or dark fantasy, and so it's been interesting for me interacting with critique groups where folks have a radically different frame of reference, and so and if they don't share the frame of reference, then they may not get the fiction in the same way that horror or dark fantasy readers would get it, and there isn't a rich culture of critique groups in horror and dark fantasy that I've found. Although there are some folks active in critique groups that are doing horror fiction. It seems to be much more prevalent in science fiction and fantasy. So there have been a handful of projects that I've gone ahead and submitted and sold without running them through critique groups. But a lot of time it's because I just say, okay, this is so weird that a critique group isn't really going to get it, or that sort of thing. But I say by and large, if I feel like it's something where it falls within the frame of reference of the critique group and that advice would be worthwhile, then I will definitely run it through there. And I think my instinct is to try to run it by at least 3 different readers. And knowing no more, no less, and I realize that I'm going to get a range of responses. and I just feel comfortable with that. I recently sold a novella where only 2 people looked at it, and the comments I got weren't very specific; they were more general. And that, you know, in the novella sold, so it worked. But I like having a critique group just because I know that I'm not perfect. But I also know that there's going to be some work that I develop that's going to fall outside the frame of reference of the critique group. And so they may not be, you know, if I give them something that's Lovecraftian horror, the average science fiction or fantasy critique group may not be familiar enough with the conventions of that particular subgenre that, you know, it's the wrong audience for the critique.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, okay, so what about you, Sherry?
I'm with Matt on that, actually. Before Odyssey, I didn't really have any critique group at all. I went to Odyssey in 2005. I guess the year prior to that, I had a group where, through the local writers collective, where we get together maybe once a month or every 2 months, and you know, we'd have 4 or 5 pages that people would read right there, and they'd say, "Oh, well, you know, you could tighten this up a little bit," and that was about it. So it wasn't, you know, particularly useful to me. So Odyssey was the first time I really actually got anything critiqued in depth. Since then, I actually haven't, until this last year, been a part of any official critique group. I mean, I'm a part of Codex, so I could submit online, but I haven't actually submitted anything there. You know, I could submit to the Odyssey Oddfellow group for critique, but I just until now, I've been just, you know, when I have something that I think I've done as much as I can with, and I'll send it out to a couple of my writing friends who don't live in the city. And now I've actually joined up with 2 others. So I have a very small critique group of 3 people that we get together about once a month, and we critique each other's novels. And so far it's working really good. But definitely before Odyssey, I went totally lone wolf. I don't really write enough short stories. I've written maybe 1 or 2 that I've gone lone on without getting feedback on, but nothing that, no. I would still get feedback on it from somebody. If not an official group, then from a couple of writing friends.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, what about you, Vidya?
I know I wrote for a little while before I started joining like real critique groups, but I don't think I've ever actually written anything without getting feedback from somebody on it, because I was usually always writing for somebody. Didn't really think about it as like beta readers at the time or anything like that, but yeah. But yeah. I can, like, even now, I think even when I write something that I don't even plan on doing much with, I'll still send it to somebody to read just for the heck of it.
Yeah, I mean, but are they, like, I mean, we'll talk a little more about the difference between general readers and, like, professional
yeah, I mean,
critiques.
I can say I've been in critique groups ever since I ever, like, seriously considered writing a little bit more professionally or for anything more than just fun. So, and I know it's been invaluable to me. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't joined those critique groups. Honestly, I think a lot of those kept me going. But it's kind of the same way I think my general readers kept me writing before that, so.
Yeah, it's funny, like, I guess I really don't know very many writers that really go lone wolf all the way. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think I only met one once, like, years ago at a convention, and I don't know what happened to him or if he's still writing.
I mean, I know I've talked to a couple of people who really, they don't do critique groups for various reasons. The online ones don't work as well for them, and like in other parts of the world, I guess sometimes they can't find people who are nearby enough where they can actually form a critique group and talk on a regular basis about writing. So that's one of those things I kind of wonder, well, I don't know what I would do in that situation. Maybe I'd keep writing, or maybe I would have just gone on and done something else.
Yeah, but there's online critique groups.
There are. I mean, I've done a lot of them. For some of them, it doesn't seem like those work as well for them. Because, I mean, there is a big difference between the online critique groups and face-to-face groups. But
yeah, that's true. Okay.
I should also As I was sitting here listening, it occurred to me that I just finished writing a story that I didn't get any kind of feedback on, but this was kind of an unusual situation in that it was something someone had asked me to do kind of for charity, and it was just a piece of flash fiction, 1,000 words. So I just dashed it off and did a quick revision pass on it and sent it off. So that's a little different. I'm not trying to sell that piece or anything like that. I'm still trying to make it as good as I can make it. But with flash fiction, it's there's not a whole lot to dissect there, really. It either works or it doesn't. So I wanted to add that too. But again, that was a real special situation.
Yeah, well, that is actually my next question.